So companies have been doing this return to office mandate. It's a very popular thing right now where companies are like, nope, you can't work remotely. You have to come back to the office. I'm going to argue that if you're mandating that and you haven't given it much consideration aside from we want people in here, you're probably not capable of managing your office workers very well. And I mean that in the narrow field of programming. However, people are actually kind of sick and tired of having to go into the office for basically no benefit, because that does happen more often than you think. The benefits are low, and if properly managed and you train people well enough, you can actually get quite a lot of benefit out of remote working or even hybrid. There's apparently some kind of rebellion of office workers against this. So, researchers at King's London College, so this is in the UK, and King's Business School analyzed more than 1 million observations from the Labour Force Survey and some 50,000 responses from the Survey of Working Arrangements and Attitudes in the UK. This gave a clear pattern of the trends between early 2022 and the end of 2024, highlighting growing worker resistance to rigid office mandates. 42% said they would listen and go back on site for 5 days a week. This is down from 54% in early 2022. The percentage of staff insisting they'd rather look for a new job than return to their current employer's office full-time rose to 50% at the end of last year, up from 40% in 2022. Women were more likely to resist RTO mandates, return to office mandates, with 55% saying they'd look for a new job and 9% ready to quit outright by late 2024. Among men, 43% said they'd job hunt and 8% would quit. Among mothers with young children, only 33% said they'd comply. Of course, that makes a ton of sense. The percentage rates weren't specified, but the study found Black and minority ethnic respondents expressing higher rates of compliance with going back to the classic 5-day-a-week on-site schedule, possibly reflecting job insecurity and workplace discrimination. That's kind of a bold claim over here. Okay, I'm not gonna lie. That's a little bit of a bold claim. I'm not sure how you jump exactly to that conclusion. I think they admit that it's, they use the word possibly, right? Okay, so they're jumping the gun a little bit, but it definitely, depending on who you are and where you are in life, these kinds of mandates definitely have a different visceral feel as to whether you would like to comply with such things. So something's going on, at least according to the UK stats here, where people are not happy with return to office mandates. I completely understand why. And I think that companies are going to lose out on good workers if they continue this very kind of narrow path towards mandating it. I think companies have to invest in their own ability to manage remote workers. It is 100% doable. It can be very effective. Everybody can win from doing it. But of course, we have kind of dumb decision makers at the top of these companies making these kinds of decisions, including from a study that we covered, I believe, 2 weeks ago, where a lot of people, at least in the last 6 months, it was since 2022, I believe, people who worked remotely were far more likely to be entrepreneurs. And I guess if you're like an executive, or a manager at a company, you don't want your employees jumping ship to start their own company, especially if they're competitors, right? So, an RTO seems quite appealing in that case, right? But I think it's the bad move to make. Instead of, enforcing your will, there are alternative methods where you can get the kind of results you want and everybody wins, right? So I don't know. We'll see how this plays out. I don't think the RTO is going to stay as strong as it is now for very long. I don't think it's going to go away, but I do think it's an indicator that companies have no idea what the hell they're doing. They don't know how to deal with this kind of stuff, especially when you have programmers who probably don't need to be in office, all the time. They just need to be focused on getting their code out the door, and you can absolutely set up communication so that it's very effective with remote work. Anyway. I think that's it. I think those are all the articles I wanted to cover today. I do have more, but there's no time. I'm trying to keep these to an hour. I'm already over here.